It's Stevivor's Friendly Fire Show, episode 218 for the start of November 2022. I am one of your co-hosts, Steve Wright, and joining me, as always, is my friend and yours, co-host Ben Salter. I said what's up before, and you said fine, and I don't think that works, but what's up?
It's a classic situation when someone says, the person's like, enjoy your drink at the bar, and you say you too or something. You're like, oh no, wrong. Did the wrong thing. The default answer was wrong.
Do you
So
do that
yeah,
and then just kind of like walk away being like, no, I've already
you've got to
lost?
walk away.
Oh, no, I do the
Yeah.
weird bumbling like, it's not because you will okay, have a good one. And then I think it's worse doing what I do, to be honest.
Yeah. That's
But I
the
never
Canadian
change.
way, I think.
Yeah.
You've got to be like super polite. So we just walk away in shame. I think it happens more with food. Like you're getting a sandwich or something, or like something that's quick to buy. And then you kind of thinking they're just going to say like, have a good day or something, like the standard end to a conversation. And they throw you off with like, enjoy your meal or something. And you've already been, your brain's queued up the you too. Anyway.
But is like I will. Is that like better or like kind of creepy or
Yeah.
arrogant or
What are you going to say?
strange?
What do you say? Like, thanks. Or like, well, I expect to. I've paid good money for this. I don't know.
If I don't like it, you will expect a letter to your manager. Just go the
Yeah.
full Karen, I guess. I don't know. Let's not do
Yeah,
that.
you gotta watch
Speaking of
out. Yeah.
going full Karen, have you needed to go full Karen on anything resembling internet service providers or NBN provisioners? Like, what is your final, hopefully, internet update,
This
Ben?
is the final one, Steve. You should feel the power of fiber coming straight through you because there's no wireless from me at least into getting to you. I think it's all wired to you as well. We're fully connected by full wire to this point because I got my house wired up to a small degree. So I no longer have to park like 20 centimeters away from my router and dodge it on a stall because that's where NBN said they had to install their thing. I had to get a guy to come and install it into my house, which is a real nightmare in a two-story house, it turns out, where the garage isn't connected to your house. Like it looks like the same house, but there's no connection at all. So they got to take off like roof tiles, and it's a whole thing. But he did it, and then he couldn't get. I got that then wired to my office where I am now, which is why I'm fully wired here. And then I was like, could you just do one downstairs as well? And then both my Xboxes and both my TVs with consoles on them can be fully wired. And he tried, and he broke his thing in the wall because he's like, there's brick in there or something. Like I can't get through the level. Um, and then was very much like, well, if you really want to, we can like do an external cable from the top to the bottom story. And I left it, and then I just used like a second router as like an AI mesh, and it's like perfect because they're so close. Like just like they're directly like opposite each other on different floors. It's like giving me almost perfect Wi-Fi coverage. So that's my hot tip for this week. If your console, I would say definitely Xbox, probably PlayStation as well, and certainly Switch have pretty poor Wi-Fi receptors. So even if you have like a second, like some type of mesh system, whatever it is, Asus lets you just use any recent-ish router as a second point. You can use that for your access and then plug in your consoles, and it works like so much better than just using the console's direct Wi-Fi. So obviously cabling would be better, but if you want to do that, that actually solved a big problem for me. So that's my hot tip for this week.
Yeah, I think it's signal strength isn't the problem. I think it's more like ping when you're doing like Wi-Fi connections that really gets you.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're a multiplayer person, obviously that's important. But also, like, I just feel like having a wired connection just generally works a little bit faster when you're
Yeah, generally.
downloading things. And I have a where's your NBN router? Is it now in your house, like inside your house and not in your garage?
The So the NBN box, if you get fiber, they install a box to the wall. If you get, I don't know what you get. I can't remember what HFC is. If you get fiber to the curb, you get like a little box which isn't connected to the wall that says on it like "Do not take from property." Um, every house I've ever moved into that's needed that, the previous tenant has taken it with them, and then I have to talk to NBN and be like, "Send me one of those boxes." So you don't get that with fiber. You get one on the wall. That's still in the garage, miles away.
Yeah.
Then there's just a point from there and a point upstairs in the middle of my house, which is where the router now is. So I
Okay.
get like perfect Wi-Fi.
So we have HFC, which is like on a box in the wall, which then connects to the router in the garage, and the router in the garage can't be moved without NBN getting involved. So then that's like in the wall to the router. Anyway, this is getting
Yeah.
into too technical of a podcast for a non-fact based show. But I'm very proud that you finally, like after what, 3 months or so, have sorted this.
Several months. And absolutely, my fiber to the curb was garbage because every multiplayer game I'd play, I was getting decentish speeds. Like I was pretty close to the 100 max you could get, but I was always having like noticeable lag. And I would get in like games like COD gives you a packet burst and packet loss warning, constantly getting it. And turns out like the thing under my house where that's in is like full of just nonsense, and like the copper wire was atrocious. So that's why that was so bad. And that's probably why there were some dodgy episodes of this podcast previously. Muddy copper, I tell
Well,
you.
we'll get into the Call of Duty-ness of it all very shortly because it is the start of November. But before we do that, you've made note, and rightfully so, that Elon Musk is now CEO of Twitter and is already on Twitter calling people lords and peasants and trying to spruik an $8 a month verification blue tick and other things clause. Does this make you want to? I'm not verified. Stevivor's not verified. Tragic
We're
shame in
peasants.
that. Are you?
No. Well, I bring this up because at the end of every show, we normally say you can find us on Twitter. Soon, you might not be able to because this reminds me of what happened to Dig. Remember Dig was like
Yep.
Reddit before Reddit, and they suddenly tried to monetize basically, and then everyone just left immediately, and it went like it just died. Dig
Yeah.
died. Uh, kind of feel like there isn't the same, it's not quite the same situation in that there's no Reddit equivalent for Twitter. There's no obvious that's where all these people would go because it's so different to the other social channels. Very like the others are so visual. This is totally text based. Um, so I'm not sure, but yeah, it's got that kind of feel about it that people are going to jump off or they're threatening to. Nibel, one of the biggest gaming tweeters, quit immediately, basically. And he pretty much just said, I've never made any money from this. Like if I was on TikTok or YouTube, this is not what he said. This is the gist of it. It's kind of like I never figured
Paraphrasing.
it out. My parenting didn't work out. So I'm not going to put any more time into this. Like it's just going to get worse as a sinking ship. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. To answer your question, would I pay $8? So what's that going to be? $12 Australian a month for a tick? No.
Well, it's like
Would I?
$69 a year in American, which I feel like is a joke in
Whatever.
itself.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't. What I don't get is if I kind of get his point that it's created a class divide, but making people pay for it just reinforces the class divide.
well, especially when you
Like
say
people.
lords and peasants, like it's like, hey peasants, give money to the richest lord in the world or one of them to become a
Yeah.
lord yourself. So pad my wallet. And the
Yeah.
weird thing
And
is, like, he wants the money because he spent 40 million on Twitter to make it.
billion.
Sorry, yes, to make it a free speech centric platform, which means like, come on, Nazis, say what you want. But also the advertisers are like, no, we don't want that. So he's like, oh, we need to make money in a different way. So he's trying to like
Yeah.
pander to both sides of this weird argument or like situation that don't equate at all. And it's just going to fail? Surely.
Yeah, I mean, and like Twitter Blues never really made sense to me. That's their current subscription, and you can pay actually quite recently to be able to edit your stuff, which I think is again, I think that's a bit dodgy. Like it should be either open to all or none, that type of feature.
Just
Not be able
delete
to
it
edit
and
on
retweet.
Twitter's. Yeah, that's been one of its features for ages. Um, and then like I think you can post longer videos and some other stuff like that. So there probably is something people would subscribe for, but I don't think it's this. And if they want to have a clear like the verification tick isn't about you verifying who you are anymore. It is a status symbol for certain people. I think the average user doesn't care, but it puts your tweet up higher. If you look at a thread, the ticked people always top. Like it's useful. Like you couldn't really make it without that type of thing. So why didn't they just change it to its? If that was their motive, is we want to get rid of the spammers, we want to make people more accountable for what they're saying, get rid of the bots. Just let any person who proves who they are with an ID check somehow get a tick. As in, it's nothing about your status that you're a public symbol or anything. It's just we've verified that you're a real person and this is who you are. That's it. But it's not what it's about at all. It's about making money.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get on this. I'm not going to harp on this. But the last time I tried to get Stevivor verified, it was like, give us 3 articles that are dictating, like showing that you're in the public discourse and da 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 da, and like from other websites. You can't link yourself. I'm like, okay, that's easy. So there was like an IGN article that like just completely took most of our quotes from an interview with Phil Spencer the one time. There was like a GameSpot article that had breaking news of like the 2K NBA, whichever 2K it was, that was doing like in-game ads and videos. Like we had all these pieces of evidence, and they're like, nah, you're not noteworthy enough. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I've dodged
Yeah,
an $8 or $20 bullet if you would have believed original
doesn't matter now.
reports. So
And it wasn't just you. I can't remember who it was. There was another podcast I listened to recently who was quite a big US or something, one of the many countries which is bigger than Australia. Same problem, like big following, certainly a noteworthy outlet or person, whoever it was, and just kept getting knocked back. And I think it was just how they were completing the form or something. But like they're so picky and choosy. Like now it doesn't matter.
the real kicker is I had the distribution list that sends press releases to like every Stevivor contact that wants one in our staff, of course, as the Twitter email. So when I got rejected for the verification, it didn't just go to me; it went to like everybody that's attached. I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing, but
Yes,
it happens. It doesn't
matter
matter
now.
soon. In a week, Twitter won't exist, so this will be a distant memory and
Yeah,
quite
we'll have to
funny.
go old school again. Maybe you can find us again on the forums. Like that's how it used to be. That's where I used to be. So
Should I make a
long time ago.
MySpace account again or something? Should I?
You can't go backwards. You got to get on the next thing. The youth these days, they don't even use internet browsers. So I don't know how they're reading your content. They just go to TikTok. Like you got to TikTok it, Steve. Get to the point
I'm too old to
immediately.
do TikTok. I would contemplate Snapchat, but even I think I'm too old for that, and also no one cares. So
Yeah. Well, I
find us
use
on
Snapchat,
Truth
but it's
Social. No, you're
free
not going to
people.
find us on Truth Social. Truth Social. Can't even say it out loud. We're not going on that. Don't worry. Uh, no segue exists to take us from Truth Social to anything of value, so let's not try, and instead we'll just talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
That's right. It's a confusing one in that you may have played this game in 2009, and I did have a little cheeky stab at this in the review, in and out box, so you knew it wasn't part of the review. They've given it exactly the same name, Steve, and that is tricky because as much as we know what's going on, I had a couple people, so two people, but that was enough to bring it to
That's
my
a couple
attention,
people. That
saying,
is
"Oh,
by definition a
I
couple people.
in real life, saying I heard they're remaking Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That was one of my favorites back in the day." Like, no, they're not. But I can see why you thought that. You just heard the title. It seems if you're not that attuned to it and you're not following games to the degree we are, and probably most of our listeners are, you probably wouldn't notice.
Well, and they're
But
using the names of the people, so it's even more
yes,
confusing.
Soap's back. Price was in the last game. Yes, so that's there. Some of the characters are here. Some of the loose themes are here. Totally different game. Overall, I think it's pretty good. It's got a mixed reception online, but I quite like it. I think you need to look at the campaign and multiplayer kind of separately, but kind of as one. In that they're intertwined, but they did a weird thing this year in that they released the campaign a week early, which I think was a great idea because a lot of people, so many COD developers over the years have told me like no one and pretty much no one from their player base finishes the campaign, and only a small amount even start it. And I think that improved over the years, but I think giving it some time in the limelight really helped.
Yeah.
It's just good fun. Like the shooting's good. I think what it does well, and it's classic COD. What it tries to do differently in that injecting some stealth sequences and trying to do a few things a little differently to mix up the pacing, and it has like sporadic pacing. It's all over the place, and I like that. Like it's not the clear build up to now just the big action sequence. And of course, no spoilers here. There's a helicopter crash. That's classic Modern Warfare. It's in the rule book that you have to have at least one. But it's not as obvious as previous games, and it's not as kind of like build up to here's the epic firefight and here's the big scale battle. Like they're all in there, but it moves a bit. I think you would have played the first few missions where you're like underwater for a while, and it's a lot slower. And I think a lot of people didn't like that. Like it's doesn't flow like some of the other games. But I like that it was a little bit different. But that's also where it loses it a little bit.
Well,
Um,
the takeaway that I have, and I've only played the first three missions, is that it's like absolutely gorgeous. And I'm not sure what it looks like on an Xbox One or a PS4, but on a Series X, like even just loading into the very first kind of like prologue-y mission with like the rocks to each side of you in a little narrow kind of
that's the
passageway,
best looking bit.
it's so pretty. I'm liking the shooting so far. I don't think I've run into like the no Russianness of it all. But in the first mission, where like you do night vision quite a lot of the time, I restarted the campaign because I didn't like what I'd done in terms of like, let's just say, shooting a civilian. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about by trying to be vague about it. Because I was just Twitch like reflexing. So you go into a room and you kill someone who is aggressive and a soldier, and then there's someone who I just immediately shot because person in my way must be a bad guy, and thought, oh, okay, maybe I could do this differently. Maybe I can hold my weapon up or like try to negotiate or something, like in whatever confines this game has. And I replayed it a second time, and the person that I'm talking about just immediately pulled a handgun from like behind their back and started shooting at me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I just have to kill you. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure how, like, if that extends into the campaign or not, but it kind of had me feeling a little bit weird. But I like, it's a shooting game. Like, you just shoot everything. I don't know like how much I actually care in the end. It was just kind of something that I noticed early on.
Yeah, it's not a hugely common theme, but it's certainly part of them trying to show that humanity of war, of things like it's not just soldier versus soldier. It's people get caught up in this and people are forced to take sides and that type of thing. So I think that's what they're trying to show there. They did that in the last Modern Warfare as well. And yeah, I think they're intentionally trying to be somewhat confronting. A lot of players probably wouldn't notice that to the degree you did. I think they would kind of just shoot, see person shoot and move on. And yeah, I think they're probably careful about it. But overall, I think it's a good campaign. They kind of get to a point a bit later where they add in things like crafting, which don't really fit. And there's a pretty dodgy vehicle sequence. But it's not used a lot. They kind of jump between these things. Yeah. You
Standard.
probably saw it somewhere.
Sorry.
This is an especially bad one.
Okay.
Besides those, a couple of dud missions. Besides that, the rest are really good. The prettiest mission, actually, by far, I just said it was the rocks, but it's actually the one set in Amsterdam, because that's the one that everyone showed. It looks like I kind of wish I could just walk around for a little bit there. There's everyone, yelling at you to move on, like, get on with the mission. I just want to look around. Also, a strange amount of like VHS plays in this game. So many. And the VCR double combos. I've got so many screenshots of them, which I don't have anything to do with. I just took because I thought, isn't that strange for a game called Modern Warfare? There must be an in-joke somewhere. But yeah, overall, I think it's a good campaign. If you like COD campaigns, you'll like this one. If you don't normally play them, it won't change your mind on them.
So it's decidedly not a remake of the original Modern Warfare 2 campaign. The thing that I'm just trying to think of like the stuff that happened in it. And there was obviously like the big twists, which we'll refrain from talking about just in case there's anything connected. We're not talking about story. But I recall like dudes with like really heavy armor that would like just walk out on the field and be like a pain to kill. Is stuff like that existing in this new campaign, or is it kind of like in name only?
Those exact dudes basically exist, the big heavy armor guys, but in a different way. Like they don't really come out in that big battle sequence anymore. They're more in your slowed down, methodical, you need to dodge them, stealth or whatever it is, style missions. And there's not a great deal of those, and they're the ones that don't really land that well. But that's why they use it. They kind of use them as we need someone who's going to be tough, like one-on-one against you, as opposed to you've just murdered 10 goons, which just went down easy. So yeah, those archetype enemies are always in this type of games.
Okay. And were you playing on what difficulty were you tackling?
Veteran. Always veteran. Every COD I play veteran. The hardest one that I've ever done is Call of Duty 2, which is you get the full 1,000 gamer score just for finishing that game on veteran, and that's the hardest game I've ever played. That's definitely the hardest achievement I've ever gotten. Because back then, give it a try, Steve. It's back compat.
I think I have.
It's impossible.
Oh.
That game it's because it's back when like grenades would just spawn on you and you would checkpoint like into a hole where you couldn't move anywhere and there was just no way around it besides like restart the whole mission. This campaign is so much easier than that. And a lot of that is because there's a few paths you can take. Like even in that underwater mission, you can go a few different directions. It's not as linear as those old CODs. A few missions do kind of bring it back to that, but they've purposely tried to make it a bit more open. And I think you kind of feel like this is one segment of a larger battle that you're not seeing. And it maybe feels a little bit less kind of epic moment because of that. But what's there is a lot more fun to play, I think.
Something that I noticed in the underwater bit, I think it's level 3, maybe it might be 2, is that you could kind of break line of sight from people, and like eventually they would just not be able to just, you know how like in some of shooters people will just shoot at you from like across the entire map because they saw you once and they'll
Yeah.
just like beeline for you forever. I feel like that's been addressed a little bit more than in past Call of Duty games. But I guess you're always just supposed to kind of like barrel forward and kill people, so that's maybe not noticeable, or maybe is, depending on how you play.
Some of them are definitely are meant to be slower missions on purpose. So, and that extends to the multiplayer. Really, the multiplayer it's a lot slower than previous Modern Warfare games. I would say it's pretty much back to Call of Duty 4, the original Modern Warfare from 2007, in terms of its speed and kind of stripping it back a little bit.
So speed in terms of like player speed, or like time to
Player
kill
speed.
speed, or both?
Both.
Okay.
So
Because Vanguard was insane. You'll spawn and die in like 2 seconds sometimes, depending on what you're doing.
time to kill Vanguard was a ridiculous game looking back on it, because it was a sequel to Modern Warfare. No, what was it called? Sequel to Call of Duty World War II from 2017, and then Vanguard was also World War II, but it was kind of not like the game that was called World War II was purposely slow, and you'd expect it to be because it's from World War II. This game kind of had those guns and those skins, but it felt like it was more like Advanced Warfare, which is the hoodie I'm wearing right now, with Gorilla spelt wrong on the sleeve.
Oh no, double L, single L? How?
I instead of a Y.
Oh,
Amateurs.
sorry.
But it still fits. We'll forget that it's somewhat linked to Kevin Spacey. Ignore that part. He's not
That's
on
fine.
there at all. It's just
You killed him in the end, didn't you? No spoilers though.
yeah.
Shit. Yeah, it's fine.
You're talking
Back to time to kill and stuff. Sorry, we're digressing.
Yeah. So Vanguard, I think, was way too quick. Didn't really make sense. Didn't feel like a World War II game. It felt like a World War II skin on like a futuristic shooter.
Yeah,
so
with
time to
like
kill.
bots and tools that were from Modern Warfare era. Sorry, you're talking and I should shut up.
No, it's a conversation. Jump in. Definitely slower time to kill. Slower movement in the sense of comparing it to Modern Warfare 1, in the sliding mechanics a bit slower, how you kind of move around just feels a little bit slower. Not drastically, but you need to take your time. You're rewarded for kind of moving around corners a little bit slower than just sprinting around everywhere. If you see an enemy and you take that fraction of a second to kind of line up your shot rather than just shooting straight away like you had to in Vanguard, you're more likely to have success. And so I find it like a very rewarding Call of Duty. It's if you'd stepped away from it and you used to play it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago even, I think you will like this.
Nice.
If you were
Well,
really
yeah,
into
because
the
you and
last
I were
couple
playing
of
co-op, like gun. What was it called?
Gunfight.
And we would just get slapped. And like I feel like most of that is that what you were just describing, because if you, it's not like you got the jump on someone. You just happen to like have a split second reaction a little bit quicker, just to like smash the triggers, or like maybe click on your mouse depending on what you're playing on. And there's not a lot of skill in that. It's just like who's got the faster reaction time. So if there's a little bit of a balance between skill, aiming, and reaction, I'm down for that, because I'm getting older, not younger. I don't know if you've noticed, but yeah.
You will love the skill-based matchmaking, which I don't know why people talk about it so much, because it's in every game. Like, it's going nowhere. It gets all this rage every time a game comes out. In theory, it makes sense. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. You should always be matched with people who are around your skill level. I do get it in that when you finally get good and you move up a skill chain, basically, and then you're bad again, that kind of puts people off, because like you were feeling like you were getting better, and then just when you should get rewarded, you're suddenly bad again. But like, what's the alternative? You don't want to be in a game where you're getting whomped by someone who's just amazing, and you also don't really want to just be playing with plebs all the time. You want to be challenged, but also successful. So I think it is the only way to go about it, really. I don't know why I get so much discussion.
Yeah, and I don't envy the people that have to decide how those systems work, because you want to have fun in a game, and I'm sure there are people obviously who cheat in everything with auto aim and quick snap and all this thing. Like, I don't understand why winning without any actual effort on your part is enjoyable or rewarding. So like the same goes for if you're being matched with people who are just like completely inept and you're god tier compared to them. So it's like you're not having fun in that instance, but then as soon as you go up to like you're the bottom of the rung of the tier you're in, you will get stomped for a bit. But also like they encourage you, or they actively make you,
They bring you up.
get better. Yeah. So it's probably frustrating, but if you stick at it, there's enjoyment to be found in bettering yourself. But we want
Generally, I think
immediate
it worked.
rewards, don't we?
Yeah. You can't all be at the top all the time, essentially, and that's not what you want. So yeah, overall, I think it's pretty good. I think the gunplay is excellent. Like Infinity Ward do it the best by far. They know what they're doing. They have all these customizations for their guns if you want to use it. That's probably where you kind of starting to see things go wrong because they had to disable that because it wasn't working and it was causing such issues. So as well as attachments, you meant to be able to tweak like every aspect of your gun, but they had to disable it like immediately. And that's probably the side theme of this game, in that there's some things which just are below the level we'd expect from a COD game at launch. They're all small, but it's things like that, like a major new feature like that being disabled on day 2 or something because it's causing too many issues. Be able to turn off crossplay on Xbox and PC, I think, not being an option. Like, that's weird not to be there. Barracks isn't there, which is all your stats. Like, this is a very stat-heavy game, and you can't look at your previous matches.
That's a weird thing that's happening of late. Like, Halo Infinite was done for that. Like, it's strange. And even, like, things getting rushed out and then having to be clawed back. Like, LeBron James isn't in multiverses right now. May is not in Overwatch right now. And before her was Torbjorn and Bastion. Like, it's just, how are these things not being picked up and tested before they come out?
I did see a great retweet today in what might be our last week on Twitter because there's a lot of like, why are these games getting released unfinished? And then the retweets just Call of Duty breaks all sales records. Top Call of Duty on PlayStation, top on Xbox, makes more money than any game has in its first 3 days in the COD series. That's why, because they can still ship a pretty good game. It's just missing a few features you'd expect to be there. The maps are all pretty good except for the one shocker, like the border crossing Mexico traffic one. That sucks. Everything else is really good. Like, they're made, I don't think they're memorable. They're not going to be remembered for years, but they're made for that 6v6 multiplayer. And I think in trying to compete with Battlefield, everyone got a bit caught up in we need to go ground war, we need to have the big maps, and they're still there, and they're good. They feel big.
They're doing Battlefield need to compete with Battlefield because it basically dug its own grave. It's slowly getting out of that grave, but like, whoops.
If you want to play a good Battlefield game, go play Ground War in Modern Warfare 2. It's way better than whatever Battlefield's doing, if it even has any players at the moment. But I think in the last couple of games, they kind of forgot about the 6v6 is their bread and butter, and the maps should be designed for that. They shouldn't be chunked off from the bigger modes. And I think they've done that well this time. They've gone, here's some well-designed COD maps which suit that style of, that speed of combat loop. And that's why I quite like it. So I think I'll play it for a while. And hopefully they iron out just some of those little things which aren't there, things that aren't working. Maybe, I think there's about 5 maps which were announced which aren't actually there yet for various reasons. So whether they're holding them for some reason or whether they had issues as well. Thinking it might be the latter based on the fact that its signature new mode wasn't available. Yeah, overall good. The only other mode is co-op, which I haven't really played because we need to play it. It's a 2-player only co-op. I tried to play with randoms, doesn't work. And
campaign or multiplayer? Because I'm fully not in Modern Warfare 2 yet. I'll admit it.
It's a third mode.
Oh.
It's a Spec Ops.
Oh, okay, so cool.
2-player only online co-op. I think, again, another missing feature. The game says, like, add controller for split screen. And when you do add a controller, all the modes disappear. Like, so it's clearly meant to be available. It just isn't yet.
You need an Xbox Series Y to handle those frames or something. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I'm in. I was talking to our intern, Ethan, today, and I'm very much... He's like, oh, you need to play online shooters and have skill. I'm like, I don't think you have to have skill. I think you can develop the skill. But I can develop the skill, and then I will quickly lose it. So when it came to Vanguard, I was close to level 50, and that's an achievement. So I kind of just, like, stuck at it. And ended up being pretty good at Vanguard, but then I gave it a week of break and then jumped back in and I just forgot whatever it was I was doing. The same thing applies to Halo Infinite. Like, I was pretty good. I was like top-ish of the big team battle score lists, and then I went back in and people were like, stop playing, you suck. And I'm like, you are correct. I forget how to do this. So I'll have to like book a time in maybe December to like properly just like jump into Call of Duty and get back into how it works.
Well, that's why you should play Spec Ops. Will be a good spot to start from that point of view because it's 2-player co-op against AI only, and you're completing objectives. So
Okay.
it's a slaughter fest, but at least you're going to get used to the gunplay again and how to move and that type of stuff. So it would be a good spot to start. And there's no multiplayer achievements in this game. There's Spec Ops achievements and there's campaign achievements. So you could actually get 1,000 or the platinum trophy and never play a game of multiplayer.
Well, there you go. And then you can just save yourself for Warzone, which is coming out soon. Warzone 2.0, I should say.
Yeah, mid November. So this should all link in. The mechanics here should feed over 1-to-1 in Warzone. That's its whole thing. It's all unified and it should feel exactly the same, which makes total sense. It was a bit split up in previous games, trying to adjust to the different scales. So it should feel very similar, and it should also feel very similar on PlayStation because old mate Phil Spencer said, as long as there's a PlayStation, Call of Duty will be on it. Should we buy Activision? This sounds like something he didn't necessarily want to say. It's just that they keep kind of alluding to, yeah, we'll keep it on PlayStation. And I think he might have been kind of had enough, and he's got to the point of just being like, forget it. Like it'll just stay on PlayStation. Like I couldn't be any clearer. The fact that he said, as long as there's a PlayStation, there will be a Call of Duty on PlayStation, which is at least suggesting that Call of Duty will outlast any console, which is probably true.
I'm fully getting sick of this whole like antitrust stuff that's going on. Like Microsoft's like, well, we'll honor some stuff, and then Sony's like, this is the highest selling Call of Duty that's ever existed, so we're not letting go of it without a fight. And then Spencer's like, oh, we'll always have it on PlayStation. And then now now it's even when it's on Xbox, if the acquisition goes through, like there's existing PlayStation agreements, which means Call of Duty's not going to be on Game Pass for a while. Like it's just all such a just play Call of Duty on whatever you want to play it on, because it's going to be like that for a while, and eventually it'll be free for Xbox as part of your subscription. But like, don't hold your breath on when that's going to happen, if it happens at all. And if it doesn't happen, guaranteed Sony will drop all of the money ever to make this like one of the only at launch third party releases that is on PlayStation Plus extras and premium day one. Watch this space, because it's only going to get more interesting if you like court reporting, I suppose.
I don't. I just want this deal to be done so that we can move on with it. And to be honest, I think Xbox will do a better job of running Activision than Activision do. They're not doing a great job at the moment. They just make COD only, essentially. They've left all... Anyway, we don't need to get into that. We've talked about it so many times. There's no progress.
We're running long on time anyway, so let's keep moving on. We both, I think, played the Resident Evil Village Winter's expansion. It's like a 2-hour piece of content. It introduces third-party mode, really, and you can put third-party mode in Village itself. I don't know if you could play in first person with the DLC, but I played in third person because I wanted to anyway. And you can do that in Village, but I didn't bother checking how that worked. It was okay. Like, this is why there's not going to be a Resident Evil Village 2 or Resident Evil 9 with this continuing story, because it's kind of petered out, to be honest. Like, they're regurgitating 7 and 8 stuff. There's weird powers that don't quite work, and if you had to play a whole like 8, 10, 20-hour game around it, I don't think it would work very well. And I'm a Resident Evil fan, so what did you think about it, Ben?
I think this is almost exclusively for you. Like, it's a pretty slow story to start. Like, if you're not super into Resident Evil, it's nowhere near as gripping as pretty much every other Resident Evil game. Like, it's pretty... I mean, Rose is not a very compelling character. The now teenage daughter of Ethan from Resident Evil Village. Turning it to third person mode changes the entire dynamic, and it feels more like one of the recent remakes than it does Resident Evil Village. Like, it doesn't feel like that at all. And I don't know if it's a suggestion that they might go back to making games like this rather than the first person style, but it feels totally different. And it feels kind of a bit dated to play. And then it wasn't super gripping not at all from a story point of view. Like, they don't really explain anything of why we're doing this. It's a very short little tidbit over she wants to remove these powers that she has, and okay. It's hard to get into. I'm not sold on it. I think it's just for the hardcore Resident Evil fans.
I don't even know if it's for them, but I get where you're coming from. I think I like third person better. I have a weird problem with first person, and that I must have some kind of like spatial awareness issues where like just I don't quite do things right in first person, or like I think I'm just clunkier in general. wherein I'm a very like right person to like just whip the camera around in third person to get an idea of what's happening, and I'm generally more comfortable playing games in that mindset. It's like $20. It adds 190 gamer score, I think, randomly. I've of course now completed that DLC and all the achievements in Village and in Biohazard Village Z version, because yes, I did buy the Japanese version for extra gamer score.
Still don't. You played that much Resident Evil and you're still not that into it. So that probably says more about this game than we ever could.
Well, the end
This
of Village,
DLC.
not to spoil it, goes into like a here's 16 years in the future, and you're like, what is happening? And this is where this DLC picks up, and it's just like, could you get back to like Chris and Jill and Leon and stuff, like the main story? And I think with all of the stuff coming, like 4 obviously, and fans continuing to clamor for Code Veronica, I think that's where Capcom's going to go. So Chris will be back to punching boulders instead of mold, in theory. Anyway, let's quickly finish up with some subscription chat. In your words, Ben, a whole bunch of stuff coming out about both Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. I guess we'll start with Game Pass. It's profitable. I think it was like 15% of their overall revenue from Xbox or something.
Pretty much everyone's just been saying that Game Pass must be losing money. It's a loss leader. They're just trying to get subs in, basically, and then they're going to hike the price. Half of that may be true, in that Phil came out and pretty much said, no, it makes money now. But he did say, at some point, with rising costs, we're going to have to put prices of things up. Now, some people took that to think that he meant consoles, because he also said that they lose about 100 to 200 US on every Xbox sold, and they expect to make that back on accessories and things. Or it could be Game Pass. Maybe both. Now, he definitely said it's not going to happen this year after making fun of Sony for doing it. Well, not making fun of, kind of being disappointed. It was kind of like a disappointed dad to Sony, being like, well, we think this is the wrong time to put the price up for consoles, without ruling it out themselves. What do you think? Do you think the price hike is going to come in the near future?
I think Spencer basically said after the holiday season, one of 3 or all of 3 or some combination therein of prices is going up, and I think you hit 2 of them. I don't know if you said games, but that could be the other one. So like one, right now games are $60 American, which is, I don't know, $100 here, and they can maybe go up to $70 US, which is akin to like I don't know, in Australia it's weird, it's between like 110 and 125 depending on who we're talking about. So that's one.
It's 110
avenue.
for everyone except the Sony.
Exactly. There's the hardware stuff that could go up in accessories, controllers, da 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 da, and the other one is the price of Xbox Game Pass. And like, I feel like we're all expecting Game Pass to go up soon, or I guess at the very least, like the end of free subscriptions for a month if you're buying this, or like $1 subscription if you're doing this. But I feel like if anything goes up, that's the first thing to increase. Mostly because that's the thing that has the most value that I would be okay with paying more for, to be honest, because of what I've gotten out of it. What do you think?
I agree. I think that's what they put up. They put up Game Pass. I think maybe to soften the blow, that's when we've already talked about their family and friends plan. They might also bring in potentially an annual subscription, which PlayStation does, Xbox doesn't at the moment, where maybe you save a little bit if you're buying a year up front. So it's possible to stack it at the moment if you get codes and upgrades and things. Like I think I've got at least a year to go. So it can be done clearly from a technical point of view. So I think maybe they bring that in to soften it a bit. But that's the obvious thing, absolutely. Unless promotion's giving it away. Like they're giving away 3 months on Twitch again this month. Like less of that. Now they have more people in. Yeah, maybe games. I'd forgotten about games because I don't really buy them. Like you just have Game Pass, right? So you don't need to buy Microsoft games. So maybe that's less of an incentive for them than Sony. And then hardware, I don't think they'll do hardware. They were so adamant on like we don't need to, and they need people. They're still third in line for console sales. So I think they need to get consoles in houses as much as they're very much you can play on whatever device you want type of area. It's still Xbox console is their main place they're getting players. So it wouldn't make sense to me. If anything, keep the price of the X the same and drop the price of the Series S whenever they can.
Yeah. Well, I guess going off what you said about the console, I think Xbox is console, but obviously they're making not making a huge push. I guess Sony's probably making more of a huge push into PC than of late. Xbox has always been has been PC for a lot longer. That's where I was trying to get. PC Game Pass
Yeah.
subscriptions are pretty high. But like it's a weird mix. Like you see the list of things coming out on console and PC, it's generally the same. There's probably more things on PC that are more niche and kind of in my opinion I'd be more inclined to try some of those games than the ones on console. So I get why maybe people on PC are giving it a punt. But I guess ultimately Spencer did admit as well that like 2022 is kind of bust in terms of Xbox first party releases. What did we get? Horizon 5?
That was last year.
No, see, I don't even remember. No, well, I guess Deathloop kind of counts, but not really because that was on PS5. I can't think of an Xbox game that came out. Game. I really can't.
Pentiment, that'll be out. So that's not even out yet. That's They in terms of like actual big AAA games, which is what the promise was, one of those per quarter, and then I think around that your smaller Battletoads type of level games to kind of pad it out a little bit, for lack of a better term. And they've pretty much done neither. Like it's just been a series of nothing. And they've got some okay games to come into Game Pass, but yeah.
Well, and they're mostly Bethesda ones. We're talking Redfall. We're talking Starfield. Like, what's the next Xbox game coming out? Maybe Forza Motorsport?
Yeah, but I mean they're Xbox games from the point of view of their launching day one Game Pass.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Had they not bought Bethesda, they would be in a pretty shoddy way. But they were meant to be this year's game, so you kind of assume there's a few things we don't know about for the back end of next year. They're both first half of 23. I think Forza Motorsport might be as well. Like there's no Forza Motorsport available to buy, so they can't keep that off too much longer. There's no option out there. So my worry would be that they kind of stack next year. The stuff that's meant to ship next year does ship, and then 24 they have another we're way behind again, and there's just a year of nothing. They can't let that happen. They just need to get stuff out. Sony manages to do it with less studios, or do they have less studios? Maybe I'm thinking ahead. When they have Activision, they'll have less, but they're maybe similar at the moment. So they don't have an issue. Nintendo punches out games basically monthly. Admittedly, they're smaller scale. They're easier to make, but they're still fun to play for the most part. So like you're not going to have 12 like Nintendo do a year, more or less. And some of them they buy, like Bayonetta. They don't make them all themselves. Some of them they outsource. Xbox coming in with none it's not going to help your subscription service.
We're a week away from God of War Ragnarok, which will like dictate the discourse for the next 2 months plus. Yeah. And Xbox, like at the very least, I guess good on them for admitting that they have nothing to counter that. So I guess
and we're just at the point. We're at the point now where consoles are maybe just becoming available to buy. Now it's not going to last long because they're all going to be bought for Christmas, if your mortgage hasn't gone up too much. And the thing is, if you're picking between, am I going to get an Xbox or am I going to get a PlayStation? Boom, God of War. Of course you pick a PlayStation. If it was around one specific game this year, there's no contest. So as much as Xbox can be saying, oh, we might have to raise prices or whatever soon, you got to get some games first, mate. And I think they know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, what are you going to buy? What's the system seller? Halo Infinite.
That's right.
Because that didn't work out very well. It's not all good news for PlayStation, though, because PlayStation Plus has lost, in the last 3 months or so, I think, about 2 million subscribers. I guess it's kind of on the cusp of all this change from PlayStation Plus to Essentials, Extra, and Premium, and what in our case Deluxe, which I keep forgetting about. It is a confusing system. I think maybe that's hindered some of these subscriptions. The other thing, I guess, to keep in consideration is that the EU regulation affected Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, and in Sony's case, I think if they were lapsed when they're, or like inactive when their subscription lapsed and would normally renew, I think they just didn't renew. But I don't think that accounts for 2 million subscriptions. I think it's the other thing, I guess, really that's a problem is there's not a lot of value in my mind right now in PlayStation Plus above Essentials, because I was hanging on for those classics like Resident Evil from the PS1 era, and that was one of the last ones that we ever got. That was a launch classic, and I think you've lamented about this too. Like, there's just not a lot coming out to justify the extra cost. Is that why you think people are lapsing, or what do you think makes up this gap?
think it's maybe part of it. I think some people who were essential thought, yeah, I'll try for a month, and you could do that. You could jump up, and they obviously have the yearly cost, which is cheaper to try to lock you in, which is what I foolishly done because I barely played any of them for the same reason. They kind of sold it to us, and we're going to have new games every month, and they do add new PS4 games. They don't add new classics. Like we've had basically, I think essentially maybe like one or two PS2 and PS1 and PSP games added, which is like Nintendo do more than that with their terrible 2 Nintendo 64 games a month or one game a month. It's like that's not good enough either. But to be fair, there's only like 25 and 64 games that are still playable. So they give you any more than that, they have none to release. Um, there are so many PS1 games, so many PS2 games. The problem with PS2 that I have is they released what 30, 40 odd on the PS4 store. And it's just those games again they're releasing. They're not doing any work to them. They're just releasing those PS4 versions of the PS2 games that already have trophies and they're upscaled already. Why are there so many which are not already in this service? And if they were going to like farm them out slowly, why are they adding none?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and I own
think, yeah,
RE1, RE2, and RE3 on PS1, on PS3, I think. And like I had the right subscription tier just to get it when they put out Resident Evil 1 again, but because I've already purchased those, I just get them again. But that's still reliant upon Sony actually releasing them to the public, and I just want those very badly.
They don't seem interested. They seem more. They're okay with the extra catalog. I think that's decent enough. It's close to Game Pass without the new releases, but that doesn't have new releases either. So it's close-ish. Yeah, I think it's that. I think a lot of people may have tried, and then they decided this is actually not that great, so they cancelled. I think maybe because it kind of renewed and they had to email everyone saying PlayStation Plus is changing, there might have been people who were just on Essential for years, not really kind of realizing, hey, I never play these games that come out every month, and I don't really play online anymore.
And the quality of those games has dropped considerably in this revamp as well. So there's no real, unless you want to play something from 2008 or something.
They've dropped down to kind of low-level barrel, but Xbox has gone below the barrel.
Xbox is equally as
games with
awful.
gold is, I don't know, they're much worse. They're
pointless. I don't even know what the games are anymore. Like I don't recognize them. So yeah,
exactly,
because everything's in these libraries now.
But much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people may have looked at it and kind of realized, well, games cost more. They're now $125. I'm better off just canceling this thing, which I never use. And like we've talked about in the past episode, like you get to a point where you have too many subscriptions. Like we just cancelled Binge because the whatever Game of Thrones show that we were watching is finished. Not called Game of Thrones anymore, the different one.
House of the Dragon.
So like, well, that's it. We should know that on such a nerdy show.
I don't watch it. I don't do fantasy, so sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Sci-fi only. Noted. But yes, so look, there's too many subscriptions. I think that's part of it. People changing how they formatted it and how they sold it to people probably made at least 1 million of those 2 million realize I don't need this anymore. It's probably just that.
Yeah, I think if you want with Xbox, if you want to get the new Halo or the new Forza or the new there's not much else coming out, but if you want those new games, instead of dropping $110, you just pay your subscription. Even in the case of God of War Ragnarok, paying the premium subscription tier does not give you that game. It gives you a demo to that game. So I would be better off not spending that money and buying the God of War and the Last of Us and whatever else comes out. And I think that's what people are doing. I think that's the biggest hit in that 2 million gap. But
I think it will continue to go two ways. They'll either kind of show that games launch into the subscription service, like say 12 or 18 months, like there's a clear pattern and people will kind of be able to, like you can kind of do with EA Play, you kind of see that's when the games come, but for some reason Battlefield didn't. People would then maybe see value in it, knowing like, right, I must have God of War now, so I'll buy that, but I can hold off playing Horizon for 18 months. I'm not as into that much, so I'll just buy one and I'll keep my subscription with the other money, which is about the same cost. If they don't do that, if they take years to put new games in there, if it's like erratic and there's no obvious pattern, like why is something like Ratchet and Clank, which is it's getting towards 2 years old, that's not in there, or getting towards, it came out this year, last year, whenever it came out, maybe 18 months old. Like that's not there. There's no clear pattern yet. I think once that's either established or not established, people will either subscribe because of that, or they'll jump off being like, just what you said, I might as well just buy the games I want.
Sony doesn't seem to be alarmed by this 2 million gap. They seem like, I think they're a little bit more annoyed that they've only sold 25 million PlayStation 5s because of probably supply chain issues and lack of availability. So they're not worried about the PlayStation Plus thing. They're worried about getting more PS5s on shelves. So clearly people are spending enough money on Plus. People are still buying these first party games day one. Like Sony's not worried so far. And we could talk about this for another 2 hours, but we're not going to anymore. We have to stop because this is a short fact-based
End of the episode.
What? Exactly. How do we find you on the internet, Ben Salter?
Well, at the moment, I'm Ben_Salter on Twitter with no verification tick, and won't be buying one at least this week. Maybe you're going to have to buy to be on there at some point. Maybe it'll be subscription only, and then I'll definitely be out. Where do we find you?
You're not claiming that on Stevivor's expenses just before you even try to float that. I am currently, I guess, maybe on Twitter at SRightAU and other social media platforms, mostly owned by Meta, which I also really don't like, to be honest. The day that this goes live, I will have my review of the Chant Up in the evening because it's still under embargo. I can't tell you anything about it, but go and check it out. My review is well worth a read. And that's it before I say something that I shouldn't. So we will see you next week.